So welcome to the Wednesday, July 8th Food on Curation meeting. And got two things going today. One, introducing the new alpha/beta of ingredients mapper software for taking lists of ingredients and mapping them into FoodOn. And then Anoosha, I think you wanted some time as well.
I just have a couple of quick questions. I hope it won't take long, but yeah, it would be great if in case we can squeeze it in.
Okay, so I'll fire up screen share. And shuttle over to get the document. Get date there. Figure that one out later. I guess the third. Okay. Oops. Okay, right. That was an active one. June 24th. July. Okay, so ingredient. And then okay, um, so one of the projects that Cameron McRae is doing postdoc involved in finishing off a project for us or his own project of which we're a part is taking a look at what people mean by traditional ingredients in foods. And so he was analyzing a whole bunch of ingredients and he had a student working on mapping them to FoodOn. And I knew the mapping problem was a bit tough, and then realized that maybe Claude AI can help. So we have Ivan working on an LLM, general LLM to ontology mapping tool, and that's good in a generic way. But and we also had this LexMapper software in the past that was just sort of a rule-bound little bit of a syntactic jiggler that would try to move terms in different orders and in order to map to a particular ontology term by name only. And that was kind of limited too. So um, all this calls for an ingredients.py Python script, which can look directly at a FoodOn or a compiled version of FoodOn and do its best to do some simple measures to simplify and standardize the input ingredient, and then um, to use whatever means necessary to map to a food on term. So ideally, we'd love to sort of have it like be an acid broth where the input ingredient is broken down into all its parts, and then all of those parts are recognized as materials or characteristics, and then the food on representation is recomposed. And if there happens to be a precomposed term to match that set of things, then it would spit that back. So this is not totally doing that, but it's on the way to doing that. We just don't have a lot of the characteristic axioms yet in FoodOn for each FoodOn food term. And so the acid digestion and reconstruction would work better if we did, but as it is, it's still looking at the terms and the synonymy of the text. Okay, so that said, it's a Python script. You run it, it creates a database of all the food on terms. And let's just see over here. Food on. Um, source. I'll leave some links for this within the food on discussion. I mean the curation discussion. So scripts, not that one. Ontology scripts. And so here's the ingredient script. Here's the database, about 3.7 megabytes of all of the food materials and food products in FoodOn and a few other branches. So it's in YAML form, and it has configuration for trying to help out a spot with synonymy, various kinds of food, the nutrients as a subclass of chemicals, kinds of sweetener, fruit, dairy, spice, herb, seed, nut, legume, grain, root vegetable, fats, fermented products, beverages, animal products, a taxonomy and anatomy, generic characteristics like color. And then there'll be a couple of other categories still to add, such as plant, leaf, plants.
Sorry, sorry to interrupt you, Damien. Are you sharing another screen? Because I can still see the
Oh,
ingredients.py.
brother, you're right. You are so right. Okay, I was showing Sublime Text, so there we go. That is so irritating. Okay, here I was zooming through this ingredients YAML file, uh, and let's see, can I increase? Yeah, and it has two parts. It has well, three parts: configuration, an assumptions section, and then an ingredients. And the configuration section has enough information to look at synonyms, roots of terms, to gather them together and to notice or to label kinds of ingredient, whether they're chemical, nutrient, sweetener, fruit. You can see how it has lists of things it covers, and it has some just general free text notes, and then some eccentric kind of categories to include. So we do think of prunes as fruits, raisins as a form of grape, and so on. So basically, a lot of this came together just very quickly with Claude, me telling Claude I need to categorize such and such as a kind of food, even if it's not immediately thought of that way. And it's just an experimental kind of thing so far. But the acid test is actually applying this to two kinds of food. So it's actually got a list of adjectives that's been found to be associated with each category of food. Um, Dairy, spice, herb, and you'll see with each category, it's got a roots section, and that says which branch of FoodOn this particular kind of ingredient hangs out in. So there is a FoodOn parent term that's dedicated to being a herb. Now, Anoosha, in our plant template, I haven't checked to see whether this aligns yet. So in the plant template, I can't remember if we have a herb category or not. And if not, then perhaps this kind of linkage will create an include file that sits outside of that templating system, just because its purpose is a little bit different.
Yeah, we don't have that right now, but yeah, it would be good to have it. I think the last time when we discussed, there was more of a confusion between the spice and herb thing at that time.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I can't remember exactly about the discussion, but yeah, there was some discussion around that anyhow. So yeah, but yeah, I mean, our plan is to add herb and spice.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Okay.
in the template, yeah.
Well, so far this has been programmed to allow items to be multi-homed.
Mhm.
So So the database itself, if we go down to like sesame seed, I'll just plug that in. This taxonomy is dedicated to providing all the CBI taxon terms. Anatomy is dedicated to providing plant, animal, um, and, uh, and fungal and anatomical terms. And then characteristics is a grab bag of all the characteristic terms in FoodOn. And so there you get into a lot of terms which aren't actually they're in our characteristics paper and they have FoodOn IDs, but I haven't finished the FoodOn table import, but we will have FoodOn IDs to map to things like diced and chopped. At the moment, we don't have that in the FoodOn. Um, I'm just going through this linearly because it's here to explain. There are some kinds of assumption that show up when ingredient lists are presented, and yet FoodOn is so much wider. So um, beverage category can have beverage mixes, powders, and so on. But if somebody mentions the word beverage alone, then we're going to have it assume here, this is all configurable by whomever is setting this up for their own purpose, that it be interpreted as the liquid beverage um, by default, unless any other words change the interpretation. So similarly, eggs, just people just mean chicken eggs 99% of the time. Uh, so this is just an example of a little rule section that can be expanded to handle those brief things. Okay, so then you get into ingredients and their overall categories, the fact that the label might be they're all keyed by ontology ID, and the label, of course, is plain English. Um, type and subtype categories are showing up here. And so we have a subtype, in this case being a functional food, a functional role or chemical. And this is coming either from the term notes in the FoodOn term, or it may also be coming hard-coded in a way from Claude AI's initial parsing of this term in some cases. But suffice to say, we're making a distinction between synonyms that exist in FoodOn or have been imported from other ontologies, and then Claude-generated synonyms. And we're giving each of these a proposal so that we can manually go through and say yay or nay that they're synonyms, and perhaps shoehorn them into kinds of synonym. So this isn't developed beyond just a flat list of synonyms. It's meant that these are exact synonyms, and haven't really given thought to finessing more than that. The synonyms are meant to be text that can be exactly matched, such that you could return this is a match to the user's ingredient. Now, I'm seeing right away with this little list that each of these synonyms is actually a, a narrower synonym. So we couldn't be using this as exact text match. Kebi, yes, Colin.
Uh, are this this code here, is this calling any APIs, or is this all just regex and like pattern matching in the Python code?
Right. So the processing is interesting. I started by just asking Cloud AI to categorize these kinds of foods based on FoodOn and this list of um, kinds of nutrient, and it came up with like the long list of vitamins that are possible, which happened to line perfectly with what FoodOn offered. It also came up with a lot of synonyms for vitamins, for example, that I didn't have in FoodOn. And so they're sitting now as annotations down in the database. The script itself started without a ingredient matcher component, insofar as there was no software out there on the web that I consulted until later last week. I discovered an NLP ingredient parser made by somebody for taking lists of ingredients and actually breaking them down into units of measure, as well as a food ingredient list that it sort of had in its own memory. And then it actually has an option to map to a USDA Food Data Central experimental firms. Maybe you've heard of it. Let's see. It's dee-dee-dee.
Sorry, what does it map to at FDC?
Let's see. Ingredient parser 2.7. Parsing information from recipe ingredient sentences. And so it knows there's some verbiage here. I haven't explored the universe of adjectives it has, but I have incorporated it into the pipeline. So it's a little bit of a juggle at the moment. But the thing that it gets to do is, let's see, where does it say? It gets to map to USDA's Food Data Central here database. So it's actually, oh, in Foundation Foods. Yeah, I think it's just limiting itself to Foundation Foods. So that'll actually be kind of an interesting test between our own mapping to Foundation Foods and what this software is doing. So I threw this in because I realized I wanted an extra little NLP step that's actually spotting the adjectives. And also, why not have it do the ingredient parsing of units of measure too? Well, that part's untested. Right, so we've just taken a brief look at the guts of this ingredients YAML and how it's generated, which the ingredients program will look at each of these configurations and rebuild the whole ingredients YAML file based on a compiled version of FoodOn that has all the imports in it. So there's a one-line command that creates the compiled version of FoodOn. And then there's another one that goes and builds from an empty file or from an existing one, the latest FoodOn entries for a given term in each of these sections. So these end up being annotations on top of a basic FoodOn build of the food material, food product, food chemical, and a couple of other little branches. And then these categories are looked for within the within those terms. So the configuration is sitting here alongside the actual database that's generated of all the ingredients. Okay, so that's the behind the scenes. And then in the front, this tool will generate three kinds of output. One is a markdown file, one is the HTML file, and one is a tab separated data file, each of them having the equivalent content. So I'll just focus on the report. So for Cameron's project, he gave us 278 ingredients to map. And so the ingredients are now So the report comes, it has these categories. Exact matches means every word matched in the label. Composite means took a few different food-on terms to map to what the ingredient was. But all of the items were mapped. And then partial means partially mapped. Few terms weren't understood in the phrase. Fuzzy meaning maybe there was a mistype that somebody entered and that was corrected for. And then a no match, of course, absolutely no nothing. So the columns, users inputs the ingredient and it could be free text that includes units. None of this tests that, but if it does, quantity and unit are parsed out. What kind of mapping, what the mapped ontology ID is, whether it's a material, and of course every ingredient should be a material. So if you've got a blank here, then that's kind of weird. It's not a material. Taxonomy to be as specific as possible about what that is. And with all of our templates loaded for plant, this will be very, very good. At the moment, it's a little bit more hit and miss. Same with anatomy. It's trying to use our template system, but if that doesn't exist yet in terms of axioms, then it can't really report much. And then the type and subtype are coming at the moment from the config files recognition of a term. And the subtype is being filled in, I believe, mostly from FoodOn's listing of functions for a particular term. But some of this may actually be Claude AI categories. So we're going to be checking against each of these subtypes to see if they're FoodOn. And then characteristics, if there's some terms left over from an exact match and well, from a match, then they will end up in the characteristics column. All these exact matches have the characteristics sort of baked into the term. But if you go further on down, live culture, alive. Now that's a little bit of it's not a good enough answer because this word culture is short usually for bacterial or microbiome, yeah, or yeast culture. So that there's an improvement that's needed. And then there's a capability of putting notes in. So if somebody selected vitamin D3 or vitamin D, yeah, that's actually not a good enough match because there is a vitamin D3. So that needs a fix because it's supposed to offer subordinate choices in the case where somebody's chosen something that's a little vague still. And there are a few cases where FoodOn has entries for the bacteria and then cases where it does not. So, so the input had a bunch of bacterial cases, but only 5 of them actually had a mapping to the bacteria mentioned in the ingredient name. So these ingredients have occasionally characteristics that may not be in the FoodOn as a precomposed term. So they're supposed to be carried on out to a field here, characteristic field that could be processed further. FoodOn doesn't at the moment have something called sweet or dark, but if it did, then it could put them into the characteristics column here and hyperlink them. So you get to go see what the characteristic definition is. Yeah, Anoosha.
Yeah, just a quick question. What does it mean when we are labeling it as a composite or partial? What's the difference between those two? Because when I'm looking
Yeah,
at some, it's
composite means that everything has been matched in the incoming term, but it may actually be spread across a couple of different categories. So we match dietary fiber to fiber
okay.
and citrus to citrus, so that completes the description of the term, even
Oh,
though there wasn't a single food on term that matched citrus fiber exactly. Um, Vanilla syrup, so is two things, the syrup and the vanilla bean food product.
mhm,
Uh, and nicely, it didn't match vanilla itself because that's a little different. A vanilla seed, that's what it derives from. So it does fit in this vanilla bean food product category. So that's a nice match. Where this one's still lacking is that it didn't extract taxonomy. It's still like the super general plant term instead of whatever the vanilla bean is. So it would be nice if it did better there. But it did get this anatomical part here, although it's not supposed to say vanilla. It's supposed to be a little more general than that. So that's kind of, that's also an improvement. Should just say bean or seed here as the anatomical part that this was derived from. It's not necessarily that the anatomy is directly in the ingredient. It could be derived from it. Although there is a case here, for example, carrot root raw is an anatomically primary root. So purples was also mentioned as a color. So purple carrot. There's no FoodOn purple carrot term, but it matched it indirectly.
mhm. So isn't that the same case if we see in the partial, there are some of them like honey almonds or milk cream, and Foodon has those things like milk and cream.
Yeah,
So,
so here it becomes a process of does FoodOn actually have a characteristic dark or sweet? Or do we need to add those characteristic terms in order to make this a composite match
mhm,
instead of a partial one? So we got the cherry, but their Foodon does not. This column here, by the way, is called unmatched terms. And so if we don't have characteristics that match the unmatched terms, then that's why it's in the unmatched column. Otherwise, it's in the characteristic term column. So dark, sweet. As soon as we have like a pedo term dark or sweet, then they'll show up as linked terms here. And that would
okay.
bump it from partial to composite. So in a way, this is a great tool to show, to test whether Foodon's doing a good job or not in our own characteristics language, and to allow us to identify what terms to improve
Mhm.
curation of. So I'll have to go and look at that one today, see why vitamin D3 wasn't mapping. And the issue at the moment is you've tried to fix one thing, like add the NLP part, and then that loses what it was doing better earlier in the week. Somehow I had it matching vitamin D3 earlier last week's. So the NLP processing has messed that up. Um, Sometimes there's stuff you just can't deal with. So here's strawberry. Strawberry is actually the flavor of this vitamin D3 product. How is our parser going to do a good job of knowing that that meant to be a flavor on vitamins? There's some intuitive knowledge here that we'd have to add somehow.
Mm.
That's why this is, even though strawberry is easily recognized, it due to its NLP processing, it figured that this was the key term and this was the extraneous one. which is sort of good, or some other, descriptor or something. So fuzzy is category that needs review. And we'd like some matches are like really good. So locust bean gum, turns out those words are often usually never merged as one. So this is a really good match. So what would be nice is to promote fuzzy, like have a little button to promote fuzzy to exact by adding a synonym here to enable this to be matched directly. Um, Ammonium bicarbonate, I looked it up. There's a couple of forms of ammonium carbonate, bicarbonate, and one of them is more popular in the food industry. So I think I went and added a term or revised that. So the next time I refresh this whole database or this section of it, then it'll have a better match here. This is interesting. This term should be improved in FoodOn if it's really, and I just clicked on it, if it's really got this in its label, then that needs to be improved. This should be a synonym. Oh, okay. And then some things are not good. So here's plant-based yogurt should not be a yogurt food product per se. And we need to add the word non-homogenized into FoodOn too as a characteristic so that it can match better. As well, this should match to cow milk rather than Uberon milk directly, which is far broader. Okay, so that's the state of affairs for this ingredient matcher. And it kind of lines up all these challenges. Fuzzy matches get a score of some kind. So there's a fuzzy matching piece that's a little bit different from the ingredient matcher. And so some more experiments have to be done. If I take out the fuzzy matcher, will the other ingredient matcher third-party thing parser do a better job? It might actually. So still some more tests to do there. But then in terms of feedback, what do you guys think needs to be added aside from these little problems fixed? What do you think would be
Also, you showed in the YAML file, you also showed something about the synonyms. Are you extracting them here as well? Because my understanding was that you're not only mapping the synonyms to food on your Claude is also proposing the new synonyms,
That's
which you
right.
mentioned. Yeah.
So there's a switch at the moment that will activate Claude's synonyms as well as FoodOn's, the
Mhm.
proposed ones. Anything that's accepted will be used to do the character word matching. But if we don't accept the Claude synonyms, then you get a lesser of a hit. So the fact that there are all these Claude synonyms also creates this curation situation where we need to review them and okay them. But we're able to run the program with or without the Claude proposed synonym matching.
Mhm.
Yeah, as I say, I can see we probably need to add a process or processing column in case there is a, milk skimming is an example of a process that you could add or skimmed would be an adjective that we would want an exact match to. Well, we have the skim milk, so that skim milk food product actually has partially or completely skimmed milk under it, I believe. Skim milk liquid. Yeah, I think there's partially and fully skimmed milk under there. Suffice to say, just have to test this on more terms, but ideally, whether it's Ivan's LLM matching or using this tool, I'm hoping that we can actually accomplish FoodX2 mapping this way. And as well could try the test of the USDA Foundation foods. See how well that works.
Yeah, we have some applications we could use it at USD. Well, we could try to use it at USDA anyway.
Okay. Yes, and Kai, I'll be able to write up that list of work related to USDA today. It's just been a bit of a crazy.
Yeah, no worries. No worries. I think Cal just wants it whenever, but it's all good.
Yeah. So this will be in addition to all of that. Okay, I'm done. I'm done my winded explanation.
I think it was great. I mean, I will say that it's a great starting point for the mapping, and especially for FoodX too. And since this is the first pass, it's natural that there will be room for refinement. One thing I felt like it could be improved more is the categories, which I felt like there's some which are overlapping, like the fuzzy, partial, and composite. That can be improved a bit. So
Yeah,
because that might lead to ambiguous mappings. That's
right,
yeah.
right. In fact, fuzzy may also include composite.
Exactly.
Maybe it should actually be just an extra attribute
Yeah,
along.
like suppose cacao butter is right now it's placing that in the fuzzy category, but it could be composite or partial, I guess.
So right. Yeah, very good. And then, of course, there's some things that really aren't ingredients. I mean, non-homogenized ended up on the list. D was probably a vitamin or something, but what can we do about a single letter? Yeah, Colin, I'm kind of curious from your end. Obviously, you have your recipe model. Did you make tools to sort of suck in and automatically categorize ingredients?
So yeah, I'm working on it. This is great, by the way. I'm definitely going to utilize what's built here and then compare it against, what I've been building and then share some findings there. I mean the way that and it's funny because I was talking to Anoosha about some of the stuff yesterday. Um, I get all these availability lists every week from distributors, and so I have something like 180,000 or 200,000 like rows of ingredients, and maybe it's like 6,000 unique ingredients. So there's a lot of great data to look at all these things, but I am trying to like separate the core entity. And then there's a ton of these different attributes that people are talking about, whether it's like, like organic or regenerative or non-homogenized or whatever. So I'm looking at it as like I got that core entity and then everything around is these attributes. And so um yeah, it's kind of like it's a few different layers of just like normal kind of like text normalization and separating things. And then, I put in the chat, there's this paper where they're using like Gemini embeddings to have some more smart understanding about these different terms that are in these ingredients lists. So yeah, this is great. I'm really excited about this part because this kind of gets into like some of the higher taxonomy orders that I'm not understanding on my side, as well as like I'm really interested too in like understanding the allergen component as I'm bringing in ingredients and knowing right away like just having that allergen label on it immediately when I bring it in.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, I guess we should touch base with Doid disease ontology because it had linkages between allergy names and food on food terms, but it wasn't very granular. So an earlier point in a paper was like trying to say whether a parsley or celery or similar taxonomy plant could be generalized to an allergy up a level, to sort of predict if somebody's allergic to one thing, they might be allergic to another,
Mm.
or an avenue for substitution. If you're allergic to something, then try one of these other closely related taxonomic ingredients. Um, anyway, okay, good. Um, if no other comments, then we should turn it over to Anoosha.
Great, thank you so much. Okay, so I just want to have some quick questions. We are left with 15 minutes, so I'll try to cover it. So I have added most of the new FoodOn IDs in this template, and mainly I wanted to know about some of the rows which we decided to dis to to not compile. I wanted to know, do we want to make a general term in FoodOn, even if we don't want to populate them with species or anything?
Mhm.
Like suppose this term will be pieces of plant seed
Mhm.
or pieces of plant seed raw.
Mhm.
So what do you think about that?
Yeah, well, do people have examples of that, beyond ground, milled? Like, are there
Mm,
cases where having a milled term would suffice? And mill, actually, and the word is commuted.
community.
It's a new word for me. Commuted means broken down into smaller parts. And so a lot of the food products that are broken down into smaller parts are covered, whether it's milling or grinding, or where you've got a powder, flour, or some smaller particulate matter from what was a larger anatomical entity like a seed. You get to put all of those terms under the word commuted,
Mhm.
communation. Shoot, I better look it up. I'm mangling it right now. Magali knew.
Meanwhile, yeah. Meanwhile, Warren, you have something to say? Please go ahead.
Yes. So how would walnut, for example, fit into this?
Yeah, right.
At least the food,
Um, uh,
because it is part of that seed, but there's only the inside that we consume.
yes,
Mhm.
exactly. So walnuts are shelled. We have and
We should have something like that. Shall
right. I think we have
Or
the characteristics shell on and shell off, and we should
yeah.
definitely have
right.
that in the seed as an option, seed menu. Beyond that, we have pieces of walnut seed. That's a good example. That would be the example we want. Pieces of.
Okay, I can add organism shell I have right now here. Maybe I added that in the menu, but let me shell on.
Sure.
And
So there's a distinction between just mentioning the shell anatomically and also having it with shell on and shell off, which is what we had to do in the animal template with crustaceans having their shell on or shell off. And the catch is that shell, uh, it's kind of a peer-to-peer, a peer
Hmm.
category. You can't have an organism shell and then have shell off as a subcategory. It's just whether an organism, whether the anatomical part you're talking about includes the shell or does not include the shell. Um, and so it's a little bit tricky. I'm just saying, Anusha, we'll have the terms, but they may not be in that hierarchy you're talking about.
yeah, I'm also thinking that because the hierarchy is based on the botanical thing, like we're adding them as a drupe fruit and things like that.
Yeah.
Suppose in this organism, when we'll compile it for walnut, just
Yes.
if I take an example, then the anatomical parent will automatically be the drupe fruit.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, so we
Ah,
don't need to probably add an additional field for that.
right. So actually, the the solution, the technical or ontological solution would be that it would be a good place to also add the food product and ideally have the shelled nut under the food product category rather than breaking an anatomical rule. You get what I mean?
Can you say it one more time?
Sure. To have a shell off of a
Mhm.
walnut, to have it deshelled, that's a processing step, meaning that we're dealing with a processed walnut, basically. And all of those process terms merit going underneath the food product hierarchy. So if we had a walnut food product hierarchy, then we wouldn't be breaking any ontological rules to put the shelled walnut entity underneath that. Whereas if we are really trying to be logical here, we couldn't, we'd have to have shell off walnut, shelled walnut outside of the drupe fruit um, hierarchy because a drupe fruit has to have the exocarp, endocarp, and mesocarp as part.
Is it possible for every organism we will have? What we can do is we can add a parent class, which will be organism food product. That way, whatever the product will be, like whatever the fruit or something will be, that will be added to the food product hierarchy as well. I'm not sure if that will make it messy or.
Uh, well, interestingly, piece of organism base
Mhm.
allows mention of things besides uh, the drupe fruit is a piece of the organism base, right? So,
Yeah, organism base right now is a tree. Like suppose,
right,
so right now walnut will be underneath piece of walnut tree or
right. And
walnut plant.
if we could anatomically describe the walnut flesh separate
Mhm.
from the shell, that could also go underneath this piece of organism base. Now that I
Yeah.
think so, actually, scratch what I just said about it's piece of organism base will include the whole seed, um, and then it can also include parts of the seed.
Yeah, and that's exactly was the point of having
Okay.
that.
Okay. Sorry, folks. I had to spin off there.
No, I think that is good. Um, yeah, does that answer your question, Warren, or any other comments about that?
No, I'm happy with it.
Okay, awesome. So yeah, okay, so yeah, so that means that it's okay to add piece of plant seed and pieces of plant seed and pieces of plant seed raw in FoodOn, so we can place
Yeah.
ground or milled underneath that.
Yep. Yep.
Okay, great. Similarly, there are some of them which I'm like suppose similarly piece of organism leaf, which will be piece of plant leaf dried. Is
Yes.
that some?
I mean, that's the question whether we need to have this mid category or whether we can just have a direct ground or milled plant leaf. Some of these intermediate hierarchies, if uh, if there's only like two or three categories underneath it, then why have that mid-level um, menu item? That's what I'm sort of wondering about. So what are we going to have under piece of plant leaf? Um,
Piece of plant leaf dried, any kind of herbs.
yeah. And then are we going to have powdered under there or um, ground?
Are those the dried? Are those always dried?
Yes.
Okay.
Of course,
Yeah, powdered. Okay.
piece of plant leaf fresh. Pesto sauce, for example, uses fresh basil leaves mowed up. So would that kind of thing, a paste? Would we have plant paste, plant leaf paste underneath there?
Peanut butter.
Peanut butter, peanut being the seed in that case. So
True.
yeah,
Are we going to add these process terms? I mean, is that the plan to add the process terms underneath these?
it is. It does suggest that it was processed, yes. But
Okay.
we are sneaking in a few processes here in the plant template, such as drying and grinding. We are accepting basically commune shoot. I didn't finish looking up that other thing. This comminuted, comminuted.
Communicated?
Comminuted is the general term for moist or dry material which has been comminuted. Oh yeah, that's the material term. Comminution. Comminution. Physical forming process involving the reduction of solid materials from one average particle size to a smaller average particle size by crushing, grinding, cutting, vibrating, or other processes. And that's straight from Wikipedia.
Mhm.
Comminuted. Okay. Um, yeah, so I think you're right. We should at least have the general terms.
Okay, so that means, um, so we are all on the same page. Then I will be adding these terms: pieces of plant seed, pieces of plant seed raw,
Mhm.
um, piece of plant seed dried. Do you think that will be helpful to have in food on?
I
Piece
guess
of plant
so,
seed dried. Okay.
because
And,
Rob's walnut example is quite good. Fresh
okay.
walnuts have to be dried, so there's even that process in there.
Okay. Similarly, I will add then piece of plant leaf dried, plant leaf fresh, pieces of plant leaf dried, pieces of plant leaf fresh. And then the last ones are piece of stem raw. I'm not sure exactly how
Mhm.
much we are going to use them. But if you have any example in mind, that would be great to have.
Yeah, thinking about cinnamon bark. I wonder if bark is considered a stem.
This is further like piece of plant stem. It's not even the full stem.
Harvested by cutting the tree's stems or shoots, peeling off the tough outer layer and gently scraping away the delicate inner layer, which rolls into the familiar tube form known as a quill. So yes, cinnamon is actually an example of a dried inner stem of cinnamon. I mean, of the cinnamon tree.
Okay.
Cinnamomum. So yes, that would seem. I mean, it can't
Okay,
hurt to have the general term. Whether we get around to actually using the specific terms is another question.
um, I mean, again, this is just for the general hierarchy. We will not be
Yeah,
populating with anything.
yeah.
Okay. Okay, then I will add these terms because we are just left with 4 minutes for the next meeting. If similarly I can get last 10 or 15 minutes, that will be great.
Mhm.
I want to make sure that for the peel, pulp, and rind, I'm not sure if that should be underneath the material class or those should be underneath the food product classes.
Right.
So I'd like to have everyone's opinion on that.
Well, they are definitely
Like
products.
suppose, suppose plant pulp is also used as a material, it's not just a food product.
Mhm.
It's used for making papers and stuff like that as well.
Yeah, true. Right. Well, at the very least, let's put them under material. And maybe they
Okay.
have a second home under product, but that could be more of a manual connection.
Okay. And rind and peel, I can't think of any material, but if you, what do you think? Should I place them underneath material as well?
Everyone else? What?
Anyone have any
I
suggestions on
think
that?
material.
Material? Okay.
Uh, can't think for anything which rind. Well, pork rind, but that's not exactly plant.
Mm.
Mhm. These are
Yes.
sort of anatomical references, even though they're
Mm,
not machine or human
Yes.
made. Um, they, so and it sort of illustrates that where convenient, we're trying to put things under the food material branch, even if they could also go under the food product branch. But since food products are more of a role that turns off and on, it's kind of a little more convenient to put them here under the material side primarily.
Mhm. Okay, just to be on the safe side, and I can, as you all suggested, I will add that underneath material branch, and then if we come up with more examples in the future, then we can manually add that underneath food product. We can connect with that.
Right.
Does that
We
make sense?
might be able to say something like plant peel is the output of a peeling process. And then because anything that's output of a process is a food product as well, we could infer that it's a food product. And that's probably the way to go.
That's also one of the way, yeah. Okay, good. Thank you. I think that was really helpful for me at this point because I really need these IDs in FoodOn. So yeah, I will be adding these terms then. Thank you very much for your feedback.
Great. All right, folks. Lots going on. It's summer. I know people are going to be going away on vacation and stuff, but I will continue to be here to touch base through most of the days, except 2 weeks from now, probably. All right. Anything else? Notices, notes? If not, we close on the nose, on the minute. Very good.
take care, guys.
All right.
So yeah.
Thank you. Bye.
Hi,
Thank you very much.
everyone.